California Conservatory of Austin. Tonight we have Robert Sewell as a guest speaker, and with no further ado, Robert Sewell.
How are y'all? Like I said, my name's Robert. I was a student back here, I think 2013-ish. So a lot like y'all, I started going to school here, just loving music, wanting to have a career in music, but not knowing how the hell to do that. And so I can remember my first tour with John. Came in, saw the studio. Never been in a studio before, so I was starstruck. Started the school, but I knew nothing. And when I say I knew nothing, I knew nothing. I couldn't tell you what a preamp did, what a compressor did. I didn't know anything. I had GarageBand at the time, but it was like I would put loops together and stuff like that, but I didn't know anything. So I started from scratch, and I remember I go to class and I tell the teachers, like, I'm sure a lot of y'all know this, when you first started, they were like, all right, so what do you know? And they'd ask stuff like that. And I remember when I first started, I would research, do like YouTube and all that on my own, but I would tell all the teachers, like, hey, I don't know anything, tell me everything. Because I just wanted to be a sponge. I remember John telling me in the very beginning, work with as many different artists as you can, as many different times. And that stuck with me throughout my whole schooling. I would say in the first 6 months of starting school here, off of his advice, working with as many people as possible, I think I had 50 different projects or something like that. And when I say different projects, there were different artists, and I know, we're required here to have like 6 or 8 projects or something like that.
Yeah, 16 bro.
Oh, it's 16 now?
Yeah.
Oh, he's getting hard on y'all.
You're supposed to book 16.
Oh.
Technically, you could finish with 8, yes.
Yeah, all right. Don't listen to what I said. 16. So I remember 30, 100. So I think it was like 50 different, and I remember a lot of friends I was going to school with when we were first start, because I remember my first project up here, I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and I remember it sounded like complete shit. But what stuck in the back of my mind was John saying, like, work with as many different artists because it's going to keep getting better and better and better. So I remember finishing the first project, like listening back, my teachers, oh, it's awesome, yeah, first project, awesome. And I was like, no, it ain't, and it wasn't to my standard. But I remember saying, I'm moving on, I'm gonna do the next project because I want to make it better. And that's what I did, and that's why I worked with so many different artists. And then also at the time when I first started school, I was working like 3 jobs, just day in and day in. And I remember I would like crash up here sometimes, fell asleep, go home. And then eventually I started being able to quit some of my jobs. Obviously that's the goal, right? To do this full time. And I think my first thing I started doing was recording YouTube artists. So I would find like high schoolers and I'd say, hey, I'd go to them and say, hey, I'll do cover for you. That was really, it's still popular, but that was really popular back then. I said, and I'll do the video. And I didn't really know what I was doing with the video, but I was like, I'll do song and video for you. And so that was a way for me to make a little money and also learn, obviously. Did that, like I said, 6 months. And then within like 8 months, I think it was, I was able to quit all 3 of my jobs, but it was hard as hell. Like, if I didn't have a session one day, like, I was tripping because I knew I was not going to make my bills. So I was still grinding out, working my ass off. And then slowly, like, I don't know, I just kept my head down and just grinding every day. I can remember the first time I saw Melodyne when I learned Melodyne. I can remember staying up all night and I would like tune a vocal and then I would delete it and tune another vocal or same vocal and then delete it, tune it again, delete it. And I would do that all night and just because I was wanting to get better. And like I said, kept my head down. And one day, like, I looked up and like now I'm here. And I've been fortunate enough to work with some pretty big artists, some pretty big records. I had my first #1 album, 2015, I think. 2016, I think, maybe. Went gold. since then. Worked on some other pretty big albums that have also gone gold, and worked with some of my favorite artists. Still, you know, I've also transitioned now. We're obviously starting here. I would call myself just an engineer, even though I was wanting to produce, but I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But now I'm like starting to transition where I'm producing and writing, mixing, mastering, trying to do everything. Like when I was a student, I remember I like was so hungry for knowledge and wanting to learn everything because that was a way to make money. And if I was making money, I didn't have to work. So that's why I was so driven to learn everything, and I still am that way. When I was in school, I remember when we first started, I'm sure it's the same for y'all, and the first class, my class came in, and we were all meeting each other for the first time, and everyone's like, oh, what genre are you going to do? What genre are you going to do? What genre? And everyone's like, oh, I'm going to do rock. I'm going to do rap. I'm going to do country. And I was like, I'm going to do everything. And that was weird to say. Like, people were like, well, you can do everything. It's like, I love everything. I'm going to do everything. Because the way I looked at it was, if a country artist came to me and they're going to give me money, I'm going to do it. Like, and I'm going to learn whatever I got to do. I got to record a harmonica. Okay, cool. Like, I'm going to learn how to record a harmonica and do it better than anyone else. So I've always had that where I want to do everything, and still to this day. Like, I'll do any genre. I've done every genre. I'll work with anyone, any expertise level, major label artists, beginner. Like, it doesn't matter. It's not all about the money either. Like, I want to make great music and be a part of that. But obviously, as you guys know, like, we have to make money if we're going to do this full time and survive. And that is a big part. It's the music business, right? So, but yeah, so I went to school here. Now I'm full-time engineer, producer, writer, travel a lot, mainly work out of my own spot, but I'll travel a lot. Last year I spent like 8 months in Nashville. So that's been kind of a cool thing to do once you're like a freelance producer and you can work with whoever you want. You're able to travel and say, oh, I want to go here. I want to go work with these artists or that artist. You can do that. So I don't want to be too long-winded, but if y'all want to get into some questions. No?
Why don't you tell us a little bit more about your storyline? When you started, obviously you got out of school now. So
Elaborate.
The storyline.
So yeah, I went to school.
How do you end up in Alum?
So I ran a session, and ended up doing one of the sessions for the owner, and he loved what I was doing. He said, hey, we're about to open a studio. We need someone.
This is before Orb opened.
Yeah, it was before they opened. And so I said, we need someone, and I went out, checked it out. It was before the place was open, was looking at the construction, had some meetings with them, talked, and I was like, at the time, I was like, I'm just doing music full time, so whatever, I was just kind of, whatever opportunity comes. So I said, yeah, I'm down, and I remember it was like January 1 is when we opened the doors, and I literally was there for, sometimes 20 hours a day. Most of the time I slept on the couch, woke up, brushed my teeth in the sink, and started running the session again. So started doing that. It was just like, when I say working my ass off, I was working my ass off. Obviously loved it and was trying to build something. So I did that for like 3 years as the head engineer, the studio manager, pretty much everything. Was in charge of the interns, ran all the sessions, did all that. But still was like guerrilla, like marketing types thing. I was still in the streets, like talking to people or going to festivals, hitting up managers, staying in contact with managers and bringing the artist in, yeah, it was a big studio, but it was also, no one knew about it. It was starting from scratch. So we had to get someone in the door somehow. So was also doing that and, was building a clientele for myself, obviously, but also was getting people in the studio and building a name for it. And so did that for like 3 years. And, it was obviously like being a part of something like that, being a part of anything else, like you obviously are putting that vision before yourself and you're putting that before your career, and turned down a lot of opportunities because I was busy with that. And so it was just like, it was move on to bigger and better things and focus on my own career. And now I get to, like I said, write and produce for whoever I want, work on the music I want to do, and travel, so sleep. Yeah. Anyone that knew me, I think we were joking, I don't know where Ryan is. He was like, yeah, I think the last time he saw me, came up to the studio, this was a couple years ago. He's like, you look like you're on the edge of death, like hadn't slept in days. And so yeah, graduated from school, ran a session, found that, did that for 3 years, every day, like I said, 16, 20 hours. And then, yeah, now it's been 2 years. When we started the studio, obviously we were bringing in interns, and some of the students actually up here we brought in for some internships. And I remember 2 of the interns really sticking out at the studio and absolutely killed it, worked hard. Same thing, would stay up all night wanting to learn, even if it was like a song or an artist that they didn't like, they asking me questions, wanting to learn. And they grinded it out, and I ended up bringing them on board to actually work at the studio as well. And so for about 2 years, that was in the first year, for about 2 years, the 3 of us kind of ran the place and did all the sessions. And so we kind of built that place from the ground up, and so now, where we are now, those 2 people are actually my closest friends still. We live together and we still make music together, and the 3 of us are in sessions every single day. One of them just got back from London today. So the 3 of us are just, we work together a lot, but also, the 3 of us do our own thing. So that's cool too, to be able to not only do stuff on your own and do what you want, but to do it with your closest friends. Obviously it's so fun to be in the studio late night working on something with a friend, and everyone's freaking out, sounding good. So yeah, now where we stand, we're doing our own thing. We have a place, like a nice little setup with some gear and treated room, and it's decent. But like I said, the 3 of us will still go to other studios or travel. Honestly, something cool that I've been doing a lot lately is booking Airbnbs and recording Airbnbs. Renting a bunch of gear and mics. That's really neat. Even if it's full band, obviously you have to know a little bit to make it sound good in the room and stuff. But even if it's full band, like 2 weekends ago, I was with a rock band, and we were on the water, 3 days, set up an Airbnb and just vibed out and worked. Literally, we would work until everyone passed out. So, and then we would wake up, eat breakfast, and start it again. So,
can you charge more for that?
Can I charge more for that? Yeah, I guess you can. I don't, or you tell them, hey,
You gotta get the cost covered at least.
Yeah. I don't book the Airbnbs. I let them take care of it. But the way I look at it is, it's the cost of a studio, but the vibe is a lot better. Because when I'm sure a lot of y'all make your own music. Like, that's the most important thing, is the vibe and making sure you feel good and you're confident. And so that's the way I look at it, is like, if everyone feels comfortable and confident, and no one's stressing about time and money, and like, oh, we only have the studio till 8, or we only have the studio till 10, and then we got to leave. So that's the way I look at it, is like, instead of booking the studio, book that. And that's been fun. A lot of big producers, especially in the pop world and stuff, do that.
Just recently, you're in a place in Wyoming.
Yeah. So, but some of those guys, they've been doing that forever. I remember seeing something back in the day. I think where like John Mayer did one of his early albums, rented a mansion in LA, and every room was a different. Like, he had the piano in one room, and the drums in another room, and the console in one room, and they had cables running everywhere. Basically, set up the studio in there, and if you know what you're doing, or you know what you want to hear, like, you can make pretty much any room work. So it's not about the studio, it's not about the gear, it's about the person behind the console, the person that's behind that computer. So I learned that very quick too, But Is that more detailed?
Yeah.
So, questions?
What's your most memorable session?
People ask me this all the time. My most memorable session was I had a 3-day session with Avicii, R.I.P. What I love the most about that is he had, speaking of like Airbnbs or whatever, he had his closest friends, like producer friends. It was like six of them, I think, total. They had 3 tour buses, and they had camera crew and all that. They started in LA. He was playing Ultra in Miami. I think this was like 2015 or 16, something like that. Huh? Oh. So they started in LA, and they basically did a tour, a riding tour on the tour bus, and they would stop at different locations. And they were filming a documentary the whole time with the film crew. And so, like, one of their sessions they did was in the Grand Canyon. And I'm not joking, if you YouTube Avicii Road to Ultra, you can find, there's live streams of all this stuff. They set up speaker stands, speakers, desk, outboard gear, everything, literally on the edge of the Grand Canyon. And they recorded, and obviously you got wind noise and all that stuff, so some of the stuff they couldn't keep, but they were just riding or whatever. But just vibing out and having a good time. But my session, we were in the studio 3 days. We had 7 stations set up and the main vocal station. So when I say stations, it was computer speakers, like little interface. One in an ISO booth, another in an ISO booth, one in the keyboard room, my station, and then Tim's Avicii station, and then one of his main producers, executive producer Carl, he was set up. And then we were all passing thumb drives around. And so at any given time, we were working on like 3 songs. And to me, that was like the most memorable because I love to work fast. I love to be efficient and quick. I hate overthinking stuff, especially when you're in the studio working on things. Like if it feels good, move on. Cool. And that's how those guys worked, you know. And so we were, you know, someone would cut acoustic guitar and then put it on a thumb drive and pass it to someone else, and someone else would throw 808s on it and then pass it to someone else, and the drums. Oh, don't like those drums. Let's redo it. Oh, here's this person. Drums. And like, oh, vocals, boom. And it was like a constant, like, you know, factory type thing. And to me, that I'm a big fan of like pop music, and the Swedes over there. I'm a big fan of Avicii. Carl, he's done a lot of stuff that I love, a lot of big pop stuff. And so to me, that was a very surreal moment, very cool moment. I remember at one point, you know, we're passing the thumb drive around, and I get the thumb drive, and then Carl's like, hey, can you tune this? And he just handed me the thumb drive, can you tune this? And I was like, oh, yeah, sure. So plug it in, I pull it up, and it was Chris Martin from Coldplay. And I'm like, what the heck? So I had to tune his vocals and, you know, act like it was nothing. Just, oh yeah. So that was probably the most memorable, really fun.
So with that Grand Canyon session, with like...
I wasn't at the Grand Canyon session. It was just, but go ahead, sorry.
But like the takes that you couldn't use from just like the wind and stuff, like in that case, would you just like take them to a treated environment and just do overdubs? Yeah,
you could either redo it, or in some cases, like maybe a little wind's okay, like a little dirt in the track doesn't matter. Like, you know, it just depends. Yeah, depending on what it sounds like. It's obviously, if it's a lead vocal, you probably want to recut it, which is probably, you know, I would probably do. But yeah, I don't know. It just depends. I don't think they kept any of the like tracks. I think it was probably mostly writing, and they would write something, get it down, and then they were going to redo it later. But if you look up the live stream, those guys were having the time of their life, which I'm sure any of us would, on the edge of the Grand Canyon, writing music. It'd be tight. So, but
who's next?
What project are you most proud of?
Most proud of? I don't think I'm there yet.
Not one of those goals?
I mean, I'm proud of those, but I'm my biggest critic. I'm my biggest critic, and it goes back to what John was saying, working on as many different projects as possible. Like, still to this day, like I was in a session all the way up until I came here. I'm in the studio every single day working on different stuff all the time, and every time I do something, I work on it till it feels good and it's done, or there's a deadline, and then I move on. But I look at that as a stepping stone, you know, as that was fun, sounds great, but my goal is for this next project or in this next song that I work on to be better than that one. So when you say like which one are you most proud of, that's, I don't know if it's the right answer, but because I'm so hard on myself, I would say probably none, because I don't know. In my head, I know where I want to be and what I want to do, and I'm not there yet, so it's hard for me to say that. But
I'm curious how some of these electronic guys really use a place like Org, since most of what they're doing is on a laptop. I know you work with Skrillex, for example. He uses Ableton and VSTs exclusively.
Right.
How does he use Org in that environment?
Honestly, like he just wanted that space for speakers.
Just a place to create.
Yeah, and like a cool vibe, and that's why I say studios don't matter, is because if at the time, if that place wasn't a comfortable, vibed out place, she wouldn't have come. And you know, and the only and honestly, he doesn't. You know, he's on hotels, he's on speakers, or headphones, he's doing whatever. But a good friend of mine is actually was at the time one of his managers, his day-to-day managers. So it took a while for him to even get into that place. We had to kind of beg him, like, come work. But when he got there, he loved it. Vibe was great. We recorded vocals. I mean, that was probably be the main thing. But yeah, he does all his own stuff, and that dude, you want to talk about talented? Yeah, I've never seen anyone like work like him. He's awesome.
So
the guy would take a smoke break and he'd unplug his laptop and he'd still be like out there smoking. It's crazy. Yeah. So does that answer?
Yeah.
what role do you play with it being in a session with Skrillex if he's just doing all the work?
Great question. Obviously, I was recording the vocals. We did some writing. I didn't write on that stuff, but I was recording the vocals. And in that situation where my mind kicks in is I have to make this guy as comfortable as possible. And that's kind of was, when I look back, that was the big role I was taking on. Obviously, I had to record vocals, make it sound good, had to be fast, had to comp, had to tune. Like, those guys expect you to do all that stuff on the spot, you know. I've worked with some really big producers that maybe don't necessarily do all the engineering stuff. And when you work with them, they're like, cool, all right, now comp it up and tune it. I'm gonna go get coffee. And like, they expect you to be done when you get back, you know? So, but in that situation, it was like, yeah, I gotta be quick, I gotta be efficient, gotta record good vocals, but I also want to make sure him and everyone else with them is comfortable. And, you know, so it's like, if you're just engineering, it's like, engineers, man, they're like, if you're just an engineer, that's one of the biggest hats, because you're doing a million different things, you know. I don't know. I'm also a little crazy. If I knew I was working with an artist, like a artist that you could Google, I would research how tall they were, and I would set the vocal mic to their height.
Oh, man.
And so when they got in there, nah, go ahead, it's already set up. Like, what? I'm like, no, you're good. Ready to go. So I don't know. Just making any little, like those little details, man, they make you, it goes a long way. The right people will notice, you know. I tried to, or a really big producer tried to steal me away, and because they were noticing little things like that, you know. And if you're engineering, strictly engineering, like, do all those little details. Even if you're producing, or you're producing and engineering, like, little details, man. Lighting a candle, getting the artist tea. Even though you're doing a million things, do those little things, and the artists they're gonna feel that. They're gonna know. Like, don't be overbearing. Don't be like, oh, are you good? You good? You still be chill, but yeah. So, does that answer? Yeah.
What would be a quick list of some other artists to work with? So Skrillex, and who else
I hate doing this.
I was working with Mike D. Was that pretty cool?
We can like maybe 5 guys.
Get right to that. Bieber, Skrillex, Avicii, Lil Wayne, 21 Savage, Metro Boomin, Drum, which was another one of the gold. Alan Parsons he did all the Pink Floyd stuff. Mike Love from the Beach Boys.
Nice.
That was fun. But yeah, there's a lot of people. Yeah. What do you say?
I was working with Mike D. He's pretty cool. That's one of my like.
Dude, he's the man.
Yeah.
The dude is
kind of an idol.
crazy talented. That's another guy that can do everything, and he's just way better than everyone else. So, yeah.
What was your first, like, oh shit, moment? Like, your first, like, I guess, what felt like a breakthrough for you personally?
My first oh shit. Right there. I'm gonna go back to the. I guess I could have had a lot of moments, but again, being so hard on myself, I look at those moments as like, yeah, it's whatever. I'm gonna go back to the Avicii session. Those guys worked really fast and had no time for bullshit. And fortunately, I was able to keep up with them and actually at times be ahead of them, like waiting on them. And all the years, like especially up here, spending all night up here, comping, tuning, editing, like learning the quick keys. If I didn't know a quick key, Googling it, all that stuff paid off in that moment. That they were freaking out. That started calling me Legendary Rob and yelling stuff in Sweden that I didn't understand. And, I tried to learn some of it, but and then another moment that I still, I saved when I worked at Alum Parsons. If you don't know Alum Parsons, he's known as like one of the best engineers. Obviously, did all the Pink Floyd stuff, and at the time, he was doing such breakthrough stuff creatively. And so he was producing. I was just engineering. And I was just trying not to like shit myself or fuck up. And at the end of the session, he said a lot of really nice things, freaked out, told me, and I even hate saying this, talking about myself, told me that I was, the best engineer he's ever worked with in his life, and that I was better than anyone else at Abbey Road. And anytime I wanted to go out to Abbey Road, like, you got a spot at Abbey Road, and he's going on and on. And then later he sent me an email, which, like I said, I saved, and that was another moment where it was like, I spent a lot of days doubting myself, like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Like, so when you hear like stuff like that from people that you look up to, it's really cool, it's inspiring. But.
I got a producer/engineer question. Alright, so one of the teachers here told us about, because I know you said you work with Justin Bieber, so just really quickly, I'm going to go through it and then I'll ask you a question. Justin Bieber's Sorry, it was like 122 tracks, and then like, if you have Logic, you can download a session where like Beck, one of his songs, I think it's called Colors, has 127 tracks. And then I know like one of my biggest problems is trying to get up there like track-wise, not because I'm trying to force it, but like, just trying to get my songs to sound louder, wider and stuff. So like, for example, my biggest track is 70 tracks right now. So what would you say, how do you get to 122, 127?
Well, first I would say don't use it as like a metric.
Yeah.
Don't try to do that. I can't tell you exactly what they were doing, but from my experience and what I do is like stack the shit out of stuff. If you're trying to create a kick, I mean, sometimes I'll have like 6 kicks. But then that creates a whole nother problem, because now you have 6 kicks that you have to make work together. And I'm not saying I do that just to stack, but it's like maybe I have a sound in my head, or I'm trying to create a kick that I want to hear, and I don't have the sample for it. I can't record it. I've looked through Splice for 4 hours and it's not on there. Or you just creatively, you want to do something that's unique and different, you know? So you stack that kick to create a sound that you want. But then that problem is now kick 1, you got to make work with kick 2 and 3 and 4. And you got to make them all, so you got to EQ and treat those. So in my experience, it's a lot of stacking. But also sometimes, man, some of those guys, like, I'm sure on the Sorry session, well, I know, like, with Skrillex, those guys, they were working on the song for months. So it was probably, like, doing something, and then 4 months later, they're doing more, and then, like, before you know it, it gets up there. But I would say stack if you want a tip for producing, stack the shit out of your stuff, but don't do it just to do it. Like, if you're putting something in your track, or you have an instrument in your track that you can't hear when you're listening back, take it out. There's no point in it being there, right? So don't throw something in just to have it. If it doesn't have a purpose in the song, take it out. You can't hear it. Like, what the hell is it doing there, you know? If you take it out and it still sounds the same, it probably shouldn't be in there. So the hardest thing is making something sound huge with fewer tracks, right? So if you can master that and you can get good at that, then you're doing something right.
You briefly mentioned that you're starting to write your own stuff. What are you writing?
Mostly pop stuff. Music-wise, everything, like pop, hip-hop. Do a lot of tracks, stuff like that. But when it comes to, like, lyrics and melodies, mostly pop stuff, and that just comes from what I love. Although I've written on, like, some rock stuff or whatever, but anytime I approach that, I'm never trying to, like, do too much or step over my boundaries. If I'm working with an artist, I'm not trying to, like, push my way in to write. If I'm writing on something, it's because there was a need, you know. So just because I've learned and I am learning to do everything, sometimes it's like they just need me to record really good vocals, so that's what I want to do. Sometimes it's, man, these guys need help with everything, let's do it type thing. So
how fast were you able to, like, switch over from TRCoA's, like, DAW to Orbs? Like, was it a weird transition, or was it
same Pro Tools?
Well, I'm just saying, because we have that board that's full of preamps.
Yeah.
And y'all have
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. If you know the basics of, like, how a compressor works, you should be able to get on any compressor and do it, you know. Preamp, I mean, it's all the same, you know, like plugins, all that stuff. So there wasn't really a transition. Maybe the hardest thing was actually working on a console, but it goes back to me being weird and obsessive. That first night, I literally stayed up till sunrise learning everything and just practicing, you know. And then my first session on the board, I was hoping I wouldn't shit myself or mess up. So, but yeah, I mean, anytime, I know this sounds corny, but, like, anytime there's something that you're, like, afraid of, whether it's a piece of gear or song or genre, like, you should, like, run towards that. And even if you're like, man, I don't need to know this, just trick yourself and say, at one point in my career, I'm going to need this. And it's going to come up big, you know, like, all those hours you put in. Music industry is hard, man. I remember when I was in y'all's position at the school, I was so naive. I thought, like, no one could tell me anything, which is a great thing. But it's hard, man. No one, thankfully, I guess I've always had that drive and to work hard and stuff. But no one, people told me it was hard, but no one really explained to me how hard it is. And I don't say that to discourage y'all. I say it as motivation to, like, really bust your ass. Like, when I lay down at night, I think about all the other people up working. And I'm like, man, they're getting the edge on me. So you should be thinking about that, you know? If you don't know how to use Melodyne, you should not go to sleep tonight. It's just the truth. Look around, look how many people are in this room, and we all live in Austin, and they're taking your money. Just think of it like that. I don't care what genre you work in.
I have two questions for them, right? With the whole scope, right, of your work in the studio, the board, you had your share of, analog and digital. What do you prefer now? What do you like? Your own preference about that, just to kind of give them a perspective about is analog really that important anymore? That's one thing. And the second question is maybe it's one thing, right, working as an engineer for a studio as a business, right? I'm guessing as an employee, right?
Right.
Versus doing your own thing. So is your approach today, because you said about the Airbnbs, I don't want the stress. The whole idea is to make everybody comfortable. Do you choose to charge your clients today by the hour, or do you do a full budget thing, and which one of those actually works better for you?
That's a great question. So the first thing about analog, are you talking tape, or are you talking outboard gear, compressors,
both, I guess.
everything?
I can go to either one.
I'll start with the tape question. To me, the tape thing is more of we did it on tape. Full band, whatever. Oh, that's cool, we did it on tape. Do I think it's practical? No. Nowadays, no. And the reason why is how good technology is getting and how good the plugins are sounding. Now, outboard gear. I have some outboard gear that I record vocals to. If I'm doing a final vocal, I will not go straight in. I will maybe if I don't have it and it's oh, the vibe's good and it sounds good. All right, I'll make it happen. Maybe I'll run it back through a compressor or something. But if it's there, I'm going to use the outboard gear. I just while recording, I like what it does. I think it does add something to it. I do.
You use it less in the mixing stage, but more.
Yeah, mixing, I'm all in the box.
All in the box. Okay.
Mixing, I'm all in the box. I can't think of the last time when I was mixing that I went on a board or routed out. Tracking, I definitely using the outboard gear. I think it adds something. I think it also adds if you know what you're doing. Nowadays, everyone's bedroom producers and everyone's doing stuff whatever. Depending on what you're doing, depending on the genre, depending on what it sounds like, that could be a little edge that you can get above those guys if you know how to use outboard gear. You know how to go into a studio. You know how to do all that stuff. Because I can sit in a bedroom on a laptop and make something sound amazing, but I could also go into, Abbey Road, and I'm pretty confident that I could get behind a board and make something sound amazing as well. And that's an advantage that you would have over people.
Yeah, especially going forward, there are going to be less and less engineers.
Less, yeah.
So you're actually going into niche that might be.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's just got to sound good. So however you get that done, but just because technology is going that way, and and I know it's oh, I'm in the box when I'm mixing, but don't not learn that. Does that make sense? Learn everything. You should learn how to use a board. You never know. Your favorite band can come to you and say, we want to work with you, but we want to be on a board. Oh, I don't know how to do that. And then you lose that session. You never know. So learn everything.
Yeah, and on the other hand, you guys should be encouraged, feel encouraged, because digital has caught up to analog, to that degree that you don't really need it anymore. And it's not an excuse anymore if you don't have the right gear.
Right.
You'll hear a lot of people in the industry who are mediocre, engineers who will say, yeah, but I need this gear and this gear to create a great mix, a great recording, but that's.
Yeah, don't listen to them. It's not about the gear. It's not about the room. It's not about the studio.
Not about the gear, about the gear.
Yeah, it's about who's behind that.
Knowledge and experience.
Yeah, and not just that. Don't be that guy either that knows everything, but then you can't make the artist comfortable. Don't be that person. Those are the worst people to work for, or work with. You know what I mean? some of y'all that are artists yourselves, like, would you rather work with someone that knows everything but is a complete jackass, or would you rather work with someone that you have a good time and it feels good and it's maybe, you know, they're okay? So just remember that. Try to master both.
Do the other question about the way you choose to charge your clients.
Oh yeah. Every time's different, but I typically just do day rates. If I'm producing, it'll be like a per song thing. I think I may have picked this off. Did I? Sorry. I try to do a per song thing. If it's producing per song, engineering, like day rate. I will do hourly, but that's rare. It just depends. Because nowadays, a lot of people that I'm working for, like I'm doing everything. I'm engineering, producing, mixing, doing all that. So it's like, yeah, we're not going to work for a couple hours. We're going to work all day. Mix per song. But obviously, like, I do set boundaries. If I say, you know, I don't know, if it's a per song rate, it's like, that doesn't mean we can work for a year, you know? It's like, and if it starts getting to the point where they're taking advantage of that, then we'll have that conversation, you know? But, yeah, day rate, get your money.
Who's the most difficult person you've worked with and why?
They're watching this live stream, so I can't say.
Right now they are.
Yeah.
You know they'll be the one.
Oh yeah.
Be on the internet forever.
Yeah, yeah, and they'll watch this, and they know who they are.
When you were more in our shoes, how did you go about?
When I was more what?
When you were more in our shoes, like as a student,
Uh-huh.
as a freelance, how did you go about finding new artists that you wanted to work with and or to produce or engineer? It might be different for each.
So say that end again, to produce or engineer?
So when you're trying to find new artists to work with,
Uh-huh.
or to engineer, just getting started as an engineer,
Right.
how did you go about finding new people and then getting your first customers?
Yeah, so in the beginning, I didn't approach things as like, I want to engineer this, I want to produce this. There wasn't like boundaries. It was just, I just want to make good music. So I never approached it as like, I want to produce you, I want to engineer it. And when I look back, I was probably doing, like, or I know I was doing a lot of producing, but I was the engineer or whatever, you know? So, but at the time, I was just so hungry and I just wanted to make good music. I didn't think about that stuff. I didn't think about money. Like, I did so many free sessions. I still do some free sessions that I'm like, why am I doing this? But I just want to make good music. How I found them in the beginning, man, I went to a lot of open mics. I was downtown almost every night, and I wasn't drinking or partying. I was like hopping to open mics, this and that. And the reason I was doing that was, if I didn't find someone, I wasn't paying my bills. I can remember I did several sessions back in the day when I was in y'all's position where I said, hey, I'll record a whole song for you. Do a whole song, just fill up my gas tank. Did that all the time. So yeah, open mics, I was on the internet, YouTube, just, I don't know, just anywhere. I'd be at dinner and someone's doing a set, go up to them like, hey, let's record, you know. So if they had an instrument or they sang, I was probably talking to them, even if they were horrible.
Especially if they're horrible.
Especially if they're horrible. They're willing to pay the most. Yeah. They're willing to pay. And but hey, you got to look at that too. When I look back, some of those sessions were pretty discouraging. Having someone that you're like, man, this isn't good, or I don't like this. I'm so thankful for those sessions because that made me so much better. I'll bring up Melodyne again. I can remember working with some, I'll say this, not very talented singers. And I would literally spend like 3 hours tuning their vocals to make it sound as best as possible. But that made me better at tuning or editing vocals. So.
I guess a similar question for Orb in general, since you were there from the beginning. How did they get the place where if Justin Bieber's in town, he's going there. How long did that take before you were getting the big names added to it?
Well, if he was in town, he's going there. It's because we were talking to him.
Right.
I was talking to him, texting his main dude.
So a pre-existing relationship that brings
Yeah. You know, some of those guys at first was just luck, like looking up on Google and it looks like a nice place. But working with those artists, I can tell you right now, they're not going to go back to a place if it doesn't feel good and we're not comfortable. It doesn't matter how nice it is. Those guys have been in the nicest studios in the world. So the most important thing, I mean, they'd rather stay in their hotel and record vocals on an SM7, you know, like. But if it's comfortable and everyone feels good, they'll go there. So yeah, some of it in the very beginning was chance, but then I stayed in contact. Me and my friends, like I told you, the buddies that started as interns and then they started working there, we stayed in contact with them. We'd go out and party with them, hang out with them, go back to their hotel room. With Skrillex, we were up in his hotel room hanging out every night. So it's like building that relationship. You know, because those guys, they can work anywhere, work with whoever they want. Those guys really care about a good vibe, good relationship, someone that they're comfortable, they can trust, you know, not some weird person that's probably going to leak their music. So, yeah. Does that answer your question? Cool.
Do you have any future goals?
Future goals. Good question. Near future or long term?
Probably
Long term. I mean, long term, I want to be the biggest and best producer. Like, yeah, I know that's a stereotypical thing, but
You should want nothing less.
yeah, I'm in this for the long haul, and I'm like, I don't care about fame and money and all that stuff. Like, when I'm all said and done, I want people to look back, they can wiki me, Google me, whatever, and just be like, holy crap. Short term, it's a great question. Short term, and I'm currently working on this. Short term, I would love to break someone here in Austin. Some artists that I've started from the jump, and I would love to break them, and you know, I think that'd be really cool for the town, and
That's cool.
Austin needs it.
Yeah, man.
There's a lot of great music here, but it's got to get out there, you know, and we're the only ones that can do it.
Let's do one more question, and then we're gonna chill a little bit. Who's gonna be the last one? Or I'll be the last one after that, but one more. A lot of pressure. You gotta go.
Alright, so I know you said you've worked with a lot of different kinds of music and don't mind, but is there any specific genre that you prefer?
I would like pop music. I'm a sucker for pop. I've always been that way. My very first, y'all gonna laugh, my very first drum session here at the school, and it's how I actually met one of my best friends, who I'm the godfather of his kid. I'll tell you the story real quick. I'll be fast. So it was my first drum session, and I was going to do a cover of Justin Bieber, and I had got some musicians. And Ryan, y'all know Ryan, was going to play drums, and he was like, "Oh, I know someone that can play bass. I know someone that can play guitar." And yeah, we'll just come in, make it happen. Again, it was my first session. I'm just trying to learn. The reason I wanted to cover Justin Bieber, love Justin Bieber, love the song at the time. I'm a sucker for that stuff. So last minute, the guitarist backed out because he heard that we were doing Justin Bieber. And he said, "Hell no, I'm not recording no Justin Bieber song." So Ryan knew now one of my best friends, Mo, who used to be in an old band with him. He calls up Mo last minute. At the time, Mo was going to UT, gigging around town. He said, "Hey man, got this student trying to do this session. It's literally for a project. I'm going to play drums. We just need someone to come in and play. I'm just going to practice miking and stuff." He goes, but the only problem is it's a Justin Bieber song. And Mo was like, oh, I don't care. I'm going to be at the studio. I get to record. Hell yeah. So he came in, and that was the first time we met. How funny is that story?
There's a time delay, so I heard you talking, and I was going to run in, and I don't know where you are.
So that was, obviously we've been friends since, me and Mo, still best friends, and that was my first like drum session, was doing a Justin Bieber cover, and that was me being selfish because I wanted to record a Justin Bieber song. I love pop music, but pop and rap.
The Drake one was really good.
Yes. We got him in a onesie.
Yep.
Yeah, so we did a lot of crazy stuff, but it was all to learn. It was all for projects.
All right, so I'm going to ask one last question, and then we'll hang out.
Make it easy.
That's a really easy question. So if, and maybe you've already answered this enough times, but let's say you were all the way back, hadn't done anything yet, you're starting out, right? What would be your best advice for people to kind of break their way in, do their thing?
That's easy. That's easy. Work as hard as you possibly can, and when you think you're working hard enough, work even harder. And don't be a douche. Be a good person. Always do the right thing. Always take the high road. And just remember why we all got into this in the beginning. Like, I'll speak for myself. I didn't get into this for any like bullshit or money or anything like that. I love music. Going back to what I very first said, when I first started here, I knew nothing. The reason why I even came here is because there was two things I was interested in. It was music and film. And I was trying to figure out what I want to do in my life. Either go to music school or film school. I didn't know anything about any of them. I just loved them. Found my way here because I loved it so much. So I always try to go back to that and remember that. That's why I started, because I love music. I'm not in it for the bullshit. I don't care about any of the other stuff. I'm going to work my ass off, make good music, and I'm going to try to be the best person I can. So if you guys do that, you'll be okay. You may not be a millionaire, but you'll be able to pay your bills, and guess what? You're making music every day, and I think for all of us, that's awesome, right? So.
Well, cool, man. Thank you very much.
Thank y'all for having me.
All right, so you guys take it easy. Hang out.